Welcome to the Film Gamer Podcast, Season 6, Episode 4, number 67. That is 6-7 overall. Let's get right to it. It's going to be a quick episode. Weekend box office, you have Devil Wears Prada 2 beating Mortal Kombat 2. Mortal Kombat 2 was a movie that was supposed to come out last October and got delayed to May because apparently it tested so high. And the interesting thing is that it rather underperformed due to expectations. It did really well on its first date of doing like 16 million, then it dropped about 20%, which is standard, and then 36%. Um, yeah, it was expected to do, 40, 41 million, maybe up to 50, but I believe the mistake this movie made was it didn't pander to young kids much, young boys. It just kind of went for the old fanboy crowd. And it's just, if you look at the trailer of it, it's with Carl Urban, who's on the show The Boys, another show that has like older male audience. And it's just kind of like, oh, that shit was cool in the 90s. And it feels like a sort of remember when kind of movie. It's interesting, and I thought it would break out more because there is a box office history, recent history of post-pandemic films breaking out in their sequels. You had The Conjuring 4 being huge after Conjuring 3 did relatively well in 2021, releasing day and date. Godzilla vs. Kong, same thing. The sequel blew up at the box office. This I thought was going to be one of those, and it didn't. The reviews for it, as people pointed out, were pretty kind, unreasonably kind, because if you look at it, it looks like CGI slop, less like a real film, and it's rated 65%. And people say that it's rated at 65% on Rotten Tomatoes because, quite simply, people have nostalgia and affection for Mortal Kombat, which makes me wonder, is Paramount's Street Fighter film going to get harsher reviews because Paramount, who I've written a report on that I'll share, I guess, in this episode, um, is that going to get harsher reviews because it's a Paramount movie and Paramount is trying to buy Warner Brothers, which I'm totally against. If you know your stuff, you know to be against it. Doesn't make any sense. We saw what Disney did trying to buy Fox, and it was a disaster. They shrunk the amount of movies, and now we have less good movies made, and I don't want that. And that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, fan ratings were pretty high on Mortal Kombat 2, but what's weird is I look at it, and it looks green screened to death. It's just about the actual Mortal Kombat tournament this time, whereas the last one was a build up to the tournament. Usually with sequels, what they should do is like hire a better director, and they kind of stuck with the same director. And this is about a 5 years later sequel, which is forgivable. We're still, even though it's 2026, reckoning with the first half that was the pandemic, which was 6 years ago. But as a result of movie going, the box office finding its footing, which we're 6 years in now. It's kind of fascinating that, we recently had the actors, led by Sean Astin, the actors union, sign a deal. A few weeks before that, the writers signed a deal because they didn't want to be the pain in the ass they were last time. And now it's up to the directors to sign a deal, which is interesting because the current lead of the Directors Guild of America is Christopher Nolan. The Directors Guild of America has never struck, not once. And, well, they maybe for about 15 minutes in the 80s, and it happened really quickly. So Christopher Nolan always really said, in terms of deal making, is that given the rate of change with AI and the industry and everything, it would be hard to get a 4-year deal. It's not out of the question, he said. But the interesting thing is that the writer signed a 4-year deal and the actor signed a 4-year deal. I think Christopher Nolan just wants a 3-year deal, and that's smart because whatever changes he make can be redone, and that's probably something that the previous Directors Guild leader John Avnet knew when he signed instantly. And if you remember 3 years ago, I believe this podcast was covering it. it was like a historic deal or whatever, but like it feels like yesterday because that was a big deal when Deadpool and Wolverine was affected by the writer's strike and had to be delayed. And so it'll be interesting to see what Christopher Nolan does. He's undoubtedly or undoubtedly, either or, I suppose, um, the most powerful director in Hollywood at the moment. Although maybe not still, Spielberg is top dog. They both have movies coming out, and The Odyssey obviously is going to get a bigger push. Um, it's just kind of an interesting thing. A question was asked on Reddit slash film or r slash movies. Why aren't they seeing more marketing for Disclosure Day? Now, you could chalk that up to Disclosure Day not being appealing, or you could go with the Spielberg mandate that they just did not want to reveal the third act of the movie. And to me, that's like the wise choice because it lives and dies on word of mouth, and I think that'll give it a long tail. And Spielberg doesn't do very many bad movies. Even his bad movies are well crafted. I personally do not like The Post. I think it fundamentally tells the wrong story. It basically takes a story about, the Washington Post in the New York Times exposing a story about the White House lying about the Vietnam War, and they have all the documents and secret documents to prove it. And it's sort of about the integrity of the Washington Post, even though historically the New York Times were the ones to uncover that story mostly. It just kind of had, it was able to attract Streep and Hanks, and Spielberg was able to make it, while he was doing some stage of Ready Player One, probably post production, which is the joke of like, you might as well call Ready Player One the Post. I believe that's what Alex Dowd wrote. But yeah, not a great movie. Again, fundamentally tells the wrong story, but it's just the stories that Spielberg chooses to tell. And I believe that he hasn't lost a step as a director. It's just the stories that he chooses to tell fall out of favor with the general public. And that's just, you know, age. I mean, if you look at the age that Steven Spielberg is now, I know he's probably in his mid late he's 79. He turns 80 this year. Yeah, him doing a UFO movie kind of feels like a throwback now. There's a lot of, UFO documents and stuff revealing, but then, you have Obama saying, there could be aliens, and people are like, what? And then he retracts it. He's like, yeah, I've never seen an alien. And to me, at this stage of my life, I do not believe that aliens exist. I believe that, biology and microorganisms exist, on other planets and water and that kind of thing. But as far as intelligent beings go, I believe that we are it. And that is what's hard for people to wrap their heads around. There isn't somebody or something around the corner. There's the old Fermi paradox by Fermat, the theorist, mathematical theorist, and he said there are two prospects. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. Uh, I believe we are alone. And I think that's part of the reason why Interstellar may have resonated, because the ultimate reveal of that movie is that we are the aliens. It is us, from another dimension or from the future. Although the whole like building the wormhole and Tesseract is glossed over entirely. A lot of problems with that script, which is why I think that movie's sort of overrated. But we don't get many space epics. The only other ones you have are Arrival and Contact, which again has a lot of cool stuff in it and is about a father-daughter relationship. It's actually a good movie to follow up watching if you watch Interstellar and then Contact. Yeah, it's not an amazing film, but it's also similar. Same producer, Linda Obst. So yeah, recommendation. Jodie Foster. Think of her as like a grown-up Mirthan, but Matthew McConaughey is the same age. He's actually way younger in it though, so that's cool. And yes, Interstellar does have the best ever Matthew McConaughey performance, but yeah, I do think Interstellar is overrated. I just think that people don't watch as many movies, so they end up watching that, and it gets popular over the years. But yeah, Steven Spielberg was going to direct Interstellar, was in his lap, and Christopher Nolan's brother was writing it, and then Spielberg decided to move off that project, and uh, Jonathan Nolan said, "As soon as you leave, I'm calling my brother in to do it," and that's how it ended up happening. Now Spielberg says Nolan would have ended up making a better film anyway, but I'm not sure because again, the writing issue of Interstellar is that the twist of Matt Damon's character happens at the same time on Earth of Casey Affleck's character coming back, you know, with Jessica Chastain. And it's just what they're trying to reveal is that the character that their dad left them uh, creates, ripples across time. And I just don't think those two plot lines in that moment reach together or, due to cross cutting, is of equal value. Christopher Nolan is better as a director. Who knows? Maybe he'll revisit something similar with The Odyssey, which is similarly about a guy trying to get back to his family, um, and is 2.5 hours long, as are most of his films. It will not be as long as um, Oppenheimer. That is confirmed. Another thing that I'd like to throw out there is you'll see a lot of AI slop and marketing stuff, fake stuff on Instagram, speculation about the Odyssey, and one person uh, who I won't name is he'll post a picture of Elliot Page and Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy and talk about, the thing that somebody who doesn't know about movies starts to talk about when they're in these culture circles, and that's politics of like, oh, woke Hollywood BS, blah, 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 blah. And what's funny to me is that if you look at Christopher Nolan's films, and one of the reasons he's so popular, particularly as a crossover artist, is that he's a pretty right wing filmmaker. Um, the Dark Knight ends with Batman using a sonar device that illegally spies on, all the citizens of Gotham in order to track down the Joker, which is, something the U.S. government is documented in Citizen 4 as being in favor of doing and has done. And, um, they tried, uh, using mass surveillance and, yeah, being in favor of what mass surveillance, The Dark Knight does state by Morgan's Freeman character that yes, this is wrong, but they end up, of course, using it one time and it works, and you know, Morgan Freeman comes back because the machine is dead. But like that's a very conservative thing. And then you look at him doing Dunkirk. That's a World War II movie. Hard to get more conservative than that. It's like Remember When. Oppenheimer, about when America delivered the bomb. These are conservative tales. And Odyssey, you're going back even further in time, and the majority of his casts are white, and the only time he kind of went against that was deliberately in Tenet to kind of correct that, and um, he does it as, I will say, for the scale of movies that he makes, and he makes pretty big scale, but he schedules his films very tightly, very aggressively. This film was shot in 91 days, which is 3 months. Most movies of this scale would be done in six. Like, when they start filming the Fast and Furious movies, like, it's gonna take like the better part of the year. You know, Mission Impossible movies famously took years because of COVID delays. So he shot efficiently. Like, for all we know, this movie could be, 150 million or something like that, which makes Christopher Nolan bank because it's good production and good negotiations, high profit margins, enables him to make these films at this scale. Um, and because it's a Christopher Nolan film at this point, especially what he did with Oppenheimer, just not making any composite characters and just loading as many people as you can into it. In this film, for instance, you got him reuniting with Elliot Page, who was in Inception with. You have um, Charlize Theron, noted producer, playing Calypso. You have, Tom Holland. You have Robert Pattinson. You have Anne Hathaway. You have Matt Damon. You have John Bernthal. Funny enough, they cast Tom Hardy lookalike Cosmo Jarvis, who was on the FX miniseries Shogun, and he looks eerily like Tom Hardy, and he had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. They replace him with noted other Tom Hardy lookalike, Logan Marshall Green, and people are like, something must be going on with him and Tom Hardy or something, or maybe he just got sick of Tom Hardy, maybe he doesn't learn his lines, or maybe he's late like he was on Mad Max, who knows. But anyways, that's the biggest film of the year, and I just wonder, is Nolan going to use that for leverage? But he just seemed to be interested in his contract negotiations. What he talk about is just the solvency of the health plan, where you basically require a major donation from the AMPTP. That's just all of the major movie studios, because you have a lot of old directors now. So it's very top heavy. And the fight against AI, of course, is an issue, which was a big issue last time. But of course, the Directors Guild um, didn't negotiate much last time. They just signed whatever deal they could. So this could be something, and I think that people will be on Nolan's side whatever he does. I just wish that he would be against the Warner Brothers Paramount purchase, because I do not think that Interstellar could have happened if Warner Brothers and Paramount were one company. It just wouldn't, because all the risk would be on a single balance sheet. And what happened was Paramount had this film in setup, and then Warner Brothers bought into it to fund it because they wanted a piece of Nolan's career. And two separate studios coming together to make a big movie is stuff that happens with these Titanic productions. Titanic, obviously, being the most famous example, where Fox was into it, and they kind of chickened out a bit, so they um, went in with Paramount, or rather, sorry, Paramount had domestic rights on it, and they sold international rights to 20th Century Fox. So that was like a two-hander movie. Another split that I can tell you about is one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years, Blade Runner 2049. They had Warner Brothers and Sony make it together. Warner Brothers distributed it domestically. Sony distributed it internationally. Sony put up $110 million, but the catch was that they would be paid back first before anybody. And this is about a $160 million movie. So you had Warner Brothers only put in $25 million, plus a distribution fee, and then Alcon Entertainment, the rights holders, did $25 million. So you had Alcon doing $25 million, you had Warner Brothers doing $25 million plus whatever marketing they had, and you had Sony doing $110 million, but they got paid back first. The movie ended up flopping because they overestimated Blade Runner's appeal. They figured post Star Wars it would be like $100 million hit. The thing is, a lot of people don't actually like Blade Runner. It's still kind of like a niche, I wouldn't say art house movie, but funny enough, when Harrison Ford was at his hottest, coming off Star Wars in the 80s, he did Blade Runner. You adjust that for inflation, and this Blade Runner film made the exact same. So their split that they did, Sony was very happy with it. Alcon less so, because they ended up on a load of debt, and Warner Brothers less so because they got paid back last. And I'm sure that the movie has made, Blu-ray 4K sales. It is one of the best looking movies I've seen. I have it on 4K. And yeah, it's a pretty good movie that I enjoy a lot, and it won Best Visual Effects, and it won Best Cinematography by Roger Deakins. I've seen the movie a number of times. It's great. Didn't make any money, but the load was shared by part Warner Brothers, part Sony. Today, you think that like that same thing would happen if this deal goes through? It wouldn't, because David Ellison is a control freak. And of course, at any level of executive, when you're a creative person, you can be, like Bob Iger. He basically said, I'm going to give you as much control as possible, but no film gets greenlit without my say so. But he surrounded himself with somebody like Alan Horn, who was like a legend, where you didn't really have to think a lot about it because Alan Horn was making all these great movie decisions. This is a guy who, he was in the Air Force, and then he went into business, and he greenlit the Matrix trilogy, and he uh, saw through Harry Potter, and he co-created Castle Rock, with Rob Reiner and stuff that made Seinfeld, and uh, so many other franchises that I can't even get. The Dark Knight trilogy with Christopher Nolan. And then he gets foolishly, stupidly dismissed by Warner Brothers because they're like, oh, we want to make way for, new blood. And there was like nothing wrong with him. They're just like, oh, we want a younger guy being the movie executive. So they hire Kevin Tsuchihara, who ends up getting fired because of a casting couch issue. An associate who, you know, as far as I know, open secrets everybody knew about. It just came out, as people do when they don't like somebody or don't like a situation. Somebody blows the whistle on something, and it's like, yes, that's inappropriate, but, people keep that stuff to themselves, and it's why what Me Too at least showed to me was that somebody would keep something to. It's not enough to do wrong things and be immoral in Hollywood. You have to also be bad at your job or not deliver results. And, if you make enemies, that kind of stuff comes out. And it doesn't matter if it was an open secret and everybody knew. It's like somebody's got to be accountable. Cutthroat town and whatnot. Um, David Ellison, who's the head of Skydance, head of Paramount, buying Warner Brothers, famously does not make good movies. And the only good movies he's made have been with Tom Cruise, which he'll coast off of for the rest of his, career life. Um, and it's just annoying to me because from 1984, which admittedly is when this, whole thing started, um, to 2019, there were six major media companies, and things were better. You had Paramount, you had Warner Brothers, you had 20th Century Fox, you had Sony, you had Universal, and you had Disney. And that was right around the time that MGM was sort of being mismanaged and fell by the wayside. And the problem is that because Amazon has such a big business, owning MGM, the movie division is never going to make it as much money. Although, it did have the hit in Project Hail Mary. Look at Apple when they made and funded F1 the movie. What they did was, they farmed out distribution to Warner Brothers, so that movie being a hit is like credit to Warner Brothers that Warner Brothers doesn't get. But the movie's a big hit, gets nominated for Best Picture. When they nominate it for Best Picture, they don't even give credit to the names because they're still trying to promote this movie like an Apple product. It's like, congratulations to all of the nominations and all you people, and then it just had a generic poster. You can tell Apple really cares. They care so much that they have not released another movie in theaters, despite having the full capacity to. And they're saying, oh, we need to look for scripts. We need to look for the right scripts. And you have producer Jerry Bruckheimer saying, like, well, that's our fault for not making good movies. And it's like, okay, well, but there are good movies. Next week, a movie which, blew the doors off TIFF, was in the running for Midnight Madness, had Nirvana, the band, the show, and the movie not come out. Obsession comes by Focus Features next week. It's about a man who is on a date with a girl and he wishes that she would be obsessed with him. And, you know, it seems to me like one of those movies, and there are plenty of these movies that just probably need a little bit more money. Although I'm sure it's inspirational and good, people like it a lot. But there are so many movies where it's just like, had they just gotten a bit more capital, had they just gotten a bit more time, it really would have been something. But these suits are just so risk averse. And they're risk averse because the margins are already so high in other divisions that these megacorps that like it's like, well, who cares about the film division? There's no incentive for them to invest because movies are a risky proposition. And when you're a bigger company, you are inherently more conservative. Um, so we're down to a 5-4 if this goes through, which includes several TV assets between Warner Brothers and Paramount. And if Paramount, which was just purchased a year ago by David Ellison, who's a Trump ally, is allowed to buy Warner Brothers, who was just bought 4 years ago by Discovery Channel, then there will only be four. And I'll tell you why it's bad for Canadians, just because I'm a Canadian and this is a report that I wrote and gave to an MP. One is market consolidation and reduced competition. Evidence of a post-merger decline set by the Disney-Fox precedent. Following the 2019 Disney-Fox merger, 20th Century's output dropped from an average of 21 theatrical releases per year in 2016 to just 8 releases in 2026. Furthermore, Searchlight, the independent label of the company, saw several titles move exclusively to Disney Plus or Hulu, or Star in Canada, bypassing Canadian cinemas entirely. The market share and concentration metrics. Warner, as it would be known, Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount Skydance, would control 30% of the North American box office. The big four, including Disney, Sony, and Universal, merged entity would control 85% of all theatrical distribution and clear the way for a smaller big studio like Sony to be merged with someone else or sold. The implication for Canada is that independent Canadian distributors, Lionsgate, Elevation Pictures, Entertainment One Films, Mongrel Media, will have fewer swing studios to partner with, likely increasing the cost of acquiring rights by 15 to 20% just because there's less bidders due to competition. There's this movie, Americana, that came out, and the actor in it talked about how, we went to South by Southwest. He's doing a movie, Paul Walter Hauser, with Sydney Sweeney, and it got good reviews. He's like, great. And then nothing comes up, and nobody bids on it. A few months go by, and they sort of get a small distribution, and it comes out, and the big headline is like that the Sydney Sweeney movie bombed, which is ridiculous because, as I spoke about it on this very podcast, it was bought by a really tiny distributor who did not have the muscle to release this movie. Imagine if Apple bought it and was just like, hey, we're putting this in a few thousand theaters for 6 weeks, and came out, and then they just, released it on DVD and what have you. I saw at Walmart all 7 Jurassic World movies, as their franchise is called now, for $54. And it's just DVDs, but with modern upscaling, stuff like that. I'm like, that's a good deal. And DVDs are thin, they're light, they can be scratched, they don't degrade, there's not as much disc rot. And I just don't encounter the problems I've had with those compared to Blu-rays or 4Ks because the amount of information that's compressed leaves less room for error. So it's just, you can do low margin pickups. It's just these companies are all about so much profits that like they don't know the meaning of the word a little anymore. And the Paramount Skydance Warner Brothers Discovery merger isn't just colossally bad for business, but harmful to Canada as well. The increased pricing power and consumer harm, once again, Canada just opening the door to getting run over by, led by American companies. Since COVID, Canadians had seen aggressive price hikes for streaming. You have Netflix, standard tier price increase from $18.63 to $21.46 with taxes in January 2025. 6 months earlier, they eliminated the standard definition basic streaming tier, which would have been fine. And before that, there was a 10% price increase in 2022, which was the second in 2 years. Both Paramount and Warner Brothers separately produced film and TV content for Netflix, and Netflix also licenses from their catalog. Combining studios would give them more leverage in negotiation and pricing, which would then, of course, be passed on to consumers, because now it just is. Pre-pandemic, companies were known to absorb the costs, and it was kind of like a thankless thing. Now they're just like, oh, because of the pandemic, oh, because of war, oh, because of like distribution costs, oh, because of trade barriers, and now they're just like straight up, yeah, we're raising prices and we're not even going to justify. And that's where we're at. Disney Plus is currently $15 a month with taxes in Ontario, and the annual $180 a year ad-free tier is a 25% jump from its launch price, which launched, 6 years ago. They've raised prices every year the last 4 years and twice in 2024, and put a household limit on account sharing, which started in Netflix, and Canada wasn't able, disappointed as a Canadian, to keep it together. Like, I canceled my Netflix, wasn't enough. People just are like zombies about this stuff. At the same time, they kill competition by limiting the amount of physical releases provided to retailers and delay those releases beyond their digital home premieres, as well as ban renting. This happened to the rental store that closed down, where they had to basically steal away some, Marvel movies when they came out, because the company was like, oh, well, we don't want renting, we'll lose revenue. That's anti-competitive. They need to fight against that. Paramount Plus just increased its annual price to $120.90. This is like a 100% increase. It was like $55.36 one year earlier. And I said to them, I'm canceling. And then they said, no, wait, we'll go back down to 55, we swear. Yeah, the Canadian market comparison. According to data from Made in Canada, as of 2024-2025, around 90% of Canadians use subscription streaming services. 40% of Canadians have access to at least three, and the top three services being American. You have Netflix 76%, Amazon Prime 54%, and Disney Plus 29%. A significant amount of money is leaking out of the Canadian economy, with Crave being fourth, 22%. Impact on Canadian broadcasters and market dependence. Licensing dependency data. You have the reliance of Canadian big three. You have Bell, you have Chorus, you have Rogers on these studios, and it is existential. Bell Media, Crave, who's terrible. As of April 27th, they estimated 60% of Crave's top 10 TV shows consist of Warner Brothers and Paramount content. Chorus Entertainment is heavily reliant on Warner Brothers Discovery brands. You have HGTV, you have Food Network, you have Cartoon Network. In 2024, Warner Brothers' decision to move these brands to Rogers caused Chorus's stock to plummet 22%, demonstrating how a single U.S. boardroom decision can destabilize a Canadian public company. The declining ad market has increased pressure on Canadian telecoms, with increased U.S. pressure from competitors. And part of it, I hate to say it, is political. In September of 2025, amid financial pressure, Chorus's Nickelodeon license expired and was forced to close its TV channel as Paramount content became available on Paramount Plus. And we also lost a few years ago, just because to them it wasn't worth it, the Paramount Network channel. And other TV channels, Treehouse and YTV, lost Nickelodeon content as well. There is a vertical integration risk that's not nearly being talked about enough. A merged Warner Mount would use Paramount Plus's foothold to have the scale to bypass Bell and Crave entirely. If they pull HBO and Paramount content to launch a verified super app in Canada, Crave could lose up to 40% of its subscriber base within a year, threatening thousands of Canadian jobs and digital infrastructure and curation. I'm talking not from Crave, but from the industry as a whole. And, let's not forget the lost revenue of these jobs. Paramount is doing terribly from when it was bought, a year ago. They're having a hard time greenlighting movies. Their biggest movie this year, and I'm looking forward to it, is Street Fighter, but they got nothing else. Political and informational influence, news consumption metrics. Data from a 2024 Reuters Institute digital news report shows that 19% of Canadians watch CNN weekly. I know it's too much. And 15% read and watch on the CNN.com website. The narrative concentration, a single entity controlling both CNN and CBS News via Paramount, who still have the most popular news magazine show in 60 Minutes, and interviewed Trump the night after his assassination attempt, which feels like forever ago, I know, but helped centralize the American perspective on global events, trade disputes, climate policy, served directly to Canadian audiences. Canadians are just kind of picking up of whatever the U.S. tells them. The Colbert effect, I call this, ironically, because Colbert is being canceled. U.S. late night programs are major drivers of social discourse in Canada. Trudeau appeared on Colbert in 2024 for Canadians to tune in September. Colbert was unaware that Canadians watched his show at all. It's actually a pretty embarrassing interview if you watch it, because Colbert, it's like, dude, the Prime Minister of Canada came on your show and he thinks that no Canadians watch it. Like, what? It's a pretty uninformed part, but Colbert is like the most pious of all the late night hosts, which is why I'm not sad to see him go. Mark Carney announced his bid to become Prime Minister to American audiences first on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Nobody had even heard of him, Mark Carney, before. I'd heard him mentioned as somebody who follows politics by Trudeau a bunch, of just like, yeah, I take financial advice from Mark Carney. And he accidentally said Art Carney, who's like an actor who won against Pacino in Godfather for a movie called Harry and Tonto, about a man on a road trip with his dog or something. Ebert said it was like a good, best actor win worthy of award, but a lot of people find it as a travesty. I'll let you know when I watch it. But anyways, the feat of just showing up on a show like Jon Stewart is massive publicity and goodwill that no other candidate in the Liberal Party could match, because they don't have, connections. I don't really know that much about Mark Carney's connections, other than his wife went to high school with Ghislaine Maxwell, which everybody will be shocked to find out about and pretend that they didn't know, years ago. The U.S. TikTok ban led to payments of $10 billion by TikTok to the Trump administration, created U.S. operations which collects more data than ever before on users, has access to the algorithm, and is backed by key Trump allies, including the father of Paramount Skydance CEO David Ellison, Larry Ellison, who backstopped the hostile takeover bid of Warner Brothers by Paramount Skydance. After I get into this, I'll get into a bit with Megan Ellison, because there is a bit of drama in the game world, but I'll get to that later. Regulatory context and precedent here. There are some precedent cases. Rogers and Shaw in 2023, the Canadian Competitions Bureau attempt to block this merger, while ultimately unsuccessful in its original form, led to the divestiture of Freedom Mobile to ensure a fourth player remained. This provides a precedent for structural divestiture, example, requiring the merged entities to sell off specific Canadian channel licenses. And then in 2012, Bell Astral, the CRTC, initially blocked the merger on the grounds it would create too much market power, which is true. It was only approved after significant benefits packages were promised to the Canadian Production Fund. Paramount Skydance Warner Brothers Discovery merger isn't just colossally bad for business, but harmful to Canada as well. The grounds for intervention here. Under the Competition Act, the Prevention of Competition Clause, Section 92, can be triggered if the merger prevents a Canadian entity, like a domestic streamer, from being able to compete for essential inputs content. Recommendation, to refine it for Parliament, mandatory licensing carve-outs, which could already be being done. As a condition of the merger's operations in Canada, the entity must guarantee that a portion of its prestige, Warner Brothers Pictures, Paramount Pictures, and television and HBO library remains available for licensing to domestic broadcasters at fair market rates, so no skirting around and doing, everything on Paramount Plus. Because I even wonder, does Canada have the strength to enforce this if it lets it go through? I see the tides shifting against Canada, and again, you have the Liberal government who's just kind of pretending it's 2006 still and nothing has changed, and looking over at the US and feeling pious and being like, well, at least we're not as bad as them, while things slowly get worse. And now we're letting the United States make it worse. Um, so I propose an increased levy for Bill C-11. Mandate that the merged entity contribute 10% of its gross Canadian revenue to the Canadian Media Fund to offset the loss of domestic production and distribution leverage, because we're losing and combining two major companies. Also, local office retention. Require the merged entity to maintain a minimum headcount of 500 plus employees in Canada. It's not a whole lot. Across its Toronto and Montreal hubs to prevent synergy layoffs from gutting the Canadian economy. Currently under CUSMA, local operations of these companies in Canada could cease to exist, and Canadians could be fed media entirely from an outside force via streaming. We should not let that happen. Conclusion. This merger is not just a corporate transaction, it is a restructuring of the Canadian living room. If the government does not impose strict conditions, we risk a future where Canadian media companies are mere pipes for a single American conglomerate, and Canadian consumers pay the price in both dollars and cultural identity. Obviously, you can read about why the $110 billion acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery financially makes no sense. Both Fitch and the S&P downgraded their credit rating on Paramount Skydance. The entity will have a combined $90 billion in debt. Some people say 80. I'm more generous. With a daily taking fee adding up to $650 million each quarter, the merger does not close. Projected synergies are only $6 billion. So they're taking on something that has $90 billion in debt. The synergies or cost savings are projected at only $6 billion. So $84 billion. Paramount is not an expensive company compared to this. It's like 1/10 of that. Warner Brothers, which is the bigger company, and we're seeing a lot of these small companies making plays for larger companies to save themselves. This is something that the Discovery Channel did. Recently with GameStop and eBay, GameStop tried to buy eBay with a promissory note, and eBay just told them to go F themselves because they find it neither attractive nor convincing and are doing fine on their own. I'm glad they released it because the GameStop CEO seemed like an ass. And now you have Byron Allen trying to buy BuzzFeed for $120 million, and he's going to pay $20 million, and then the rest is going to be financed with debt. A lot of debt financing going on. Really lets you know I'm not a fan of the term late stage capitalism, but it really feels like it. So that the Canadian Competition Bureau can review this merger. And as a side note, I just want to say Skydance makes very bad movies, especially when they don't star Tom Cruise. They bought Paramount only last year, and their 2026 slate doesn't look promising. So this is something that I'm going to, if I can, I wonder if I'll be able to highlight, because I made this all into only 4 pages. I'm going to copy it and then see if I can put that on my website. Thought about writing some other reviews, but I got sort of a lot going on. What can I say? Anyway, so let's we'll move on from this right as I finish formatting this. Here we go. And one thing I didn't even get on about that was how importantly it was revealed after I wrote that paper that company, when it merges, will be 49.5% foreign owned. That is, owned by a company outside the United States and Canada. It'll be owned by Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi and Qatar and those Middle East countries, which you should know. There's a rule that foreign companies cannot be owned by companies in America cannot be owned by foreign companies by more than 25% ownership, especially major conglomerates. Yeah, so 49.5% really, really steps over that. Hugely, bigly. I'm also glad though that my links were preserved in doing this. Okay, and then I'll highlight that, and then I'll save that, and then I'll probably include a note later, but I got that under there. And how long did that take me to do? 20 minutes. It's a good pitch. Back up as this post is different than the one before. Well, how is that even possible? Let me save again. Is it going to let me save a featured image? That's the question. 1,200 words, that's pretty good. I need to give myself some credit, for the work I do. I don't really give myself nearly enough. Yeah, I don't have it here. Gosh, my jaw is so tight. I got athletic therapy today, and that was painful on my left arm. Very, very painful. But do we get into movies? We do not here. If we go into movies here, and then I go to movie, and then I go to movies again, yeah, it's nothing. Okay, well, I'll add that later. Can I save this here? It's gonna let me save. It will not. If I go to ... all image options, still nothing. Okay. I'd have to do like a thing. I don't think I'll be able to riff that long. Yeah, it doesn't work. Copy and paste just like straight up doesn't work. That sucks. There goes, hold on. Can I pause this? I want this to be clean. It's never too late to start clean. Okay. So, moving on. I can close this, save this. This is not a film review. It is actually a case. I only do those every once in a while when it's a big overview. So I should call it case. The backup, if this F off. Yes, I know. I'm saving it for the first time. I almost accidentally hit publish, and that would have been good. I need to publish stuff at popular times now. Okay. Okay, so that's taking care of that. Moving on, moving on, moving on. Then we get into the rest of the box office. So Devil Wears Prada 2, it's a big hit. Knew it was a big hit, nostalgia. It's eclipsed the first one by a lot. It's 439 million worldwide. This was apparently a replacement for Avengers Doomsday, which wasn't ready in time, so they put Devil Wears Prada on that. Guess which company made this? 20th Century Studios. Again, it's just sequels to their existing material, and again, it's like a hit maker, so they're not going to change it. But it's like, why don't they release more original movies? Disney is so terrible at making original movies. They really have not had many original non-Pixar hits, and non-Disney musicals since like the beginning of the century. But yeah, and yeah, I mentioned earlier that my jaw is tight. That is true. I'm just very tense and clenched. So I'm trying to fix my posture here. Apologies for the sound issues. Yeah, I need to fix my chair or something. But yeah, Devil Wears Prada doing well. But what was I going to compare it to? This year in box office is doing decently, I'd like to point out. We are up to $700 million films. We usually, in past years, haven't gotten this high until like July, or it's been slow. Like I remember the Dune, I think it was the Dune 2 year. Is that 2023? No, because that would have been, I'll say early 2024. Yeah. And that went until like June, where it was like the only Inside Out 2 was like the second movie to hit 100 million, and people were like, oh. But that was also the strike related year where they had the actor and writer strike I talked about. So yeah, this year is on the way to recovery and getting close to the halfway point. For comparison, just so you know, if these big numbers mean anything to you, I don't care about the average domestic yearly box office. We're at 2 billion, which is not a lot so far, but again, so in 2019 there were 792 releases. Last year there were 602, so there aren't as many movies being released. There need to be more, for one, to get up to that level. But that hit 11 billion, and so crawling its way back up to 11 billion. 2020 you have 1.4, 21 4.8, 22 and so on 7.5, 8.8, 8.6 in 2024. That was the Dune year where I talked about the writer's strike impacted it, and so it shuffled. And then 2025 was like not as high as 2023, but they had 100 more releases, and it's somewhat worrisome. But this is like should be a sort of a full strength year. So yeah, so far the average is similar to 2021, but again, we'll just have to see as the year goes on. One thing would be if they figured out a way to bring down ticket prices, but anyways, number 3 is Michael, the Michael Jackson movie. I talked about it, raking it in. Yep, 241 million, 589 billion worldwide. It has its fans, and now you have the annoying online fan bots that think, just shouting something on Reddit or Twitter and buying a bunch of followers means something. It's really illuminated me to realize that how meaningless a lot of it is. Like, I'll comment something on Twitter, and then I'll think about it, and I'll be like, yeah, means nothing. People who are liking it are mostly bots or people who never read it. Well, it's not, meaningful. Yeah. Like I did something 2 hours ago that I thought was like a funny joke. 40 users saw it, deleted it. That was the Shane Gillis hosting the roast of Kevin Hart. The last funny thing that I said, that I posted on my own, it's tough because again this website, Bill Maher argued against social media being freedom of speech. I think we're there. I think we're getting there, where we spend so much time on social media that it should be regulated in a way that it's considered free speech. But, it's the privately held company as it was first, so, long way to go for that. But I just kind of think it's weird, considering so many people get their news from here, that A, there's no penalty for, like, lying when you present yourself as a news source. I think people should, like, be upfront and assume the responsibility of it if they're going to do it. And B, you shouldn't be censored or seen less because you don't pay money. Everything should be seen, and then, if it's being boosted because it's paying a subscription, it should be shown that. But yeah, the last popular thing I posted was $8 a film, how can you go wrong? And that was a Jurassic World post. One person liked it, 43 people saw it. But yeah, and then the last clever response, and this is just on Twitter, by the way, that I had said was, I can delete that, some Daniel Smith talking about the most dumbass politician thing of like, yeah, we would support Alberta remaining in Canada, but we're gonna fight to continue with it because I'm an industry plant who doesn't know what I'm doing. This is how Brexit got started, and it led to financial ruin. Um, I mean, on the plus side, maybe it will lead to proper reconciliation with the natives that we need to do, but holy moly, it's just clear as day to me that the whole Alberta separation is led by disinformation campaigns from the United States that people are not educated on, and people from like the Netherlands and stuff. It's just if you separate Canada into different states, then they're easy to pick apart and they'll be weaker. We have to stay together and be a united front. So this lady is like an industry plant, and it doesn't help that the opposition leader is an NDP moron who, like, it's trying to rule as a moderate because it worked out so well for Kamala Harris. Let me be middle of the road, and it worked out so well for Aaron O'Toole. You are no use to somebody politically being in the middle of the road. You have to only be yourself. That is the only option you have because A, everyone else is taking, and B, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Um, and yeah, that's all I have to say about that in regards to politics. Um, yeah, nobody cares about that. Nobody cares about that. Somebody pointing out people do not realize Americans don't understand how repulsive it is when Trump talks about random country being 51st state. Yeah. Um, that's just what somebody else said. I'm trying to find out the clever thing that I said, and I just tweet so much, and it's not worth it. I really need to get off Twitter. Oh, Carney talking about jobs, and I was just saying how a lot of them go to temporary foreign workers. And I was thinking, I was at the pharmacy today, and the pharmacist was like, yeah, this will take a while. And I'm like, how long's a while? And he was like, I don't know, a couple of days. And I'm like, why? And he's like, oh, okay. A couple of hours then. And I'm like, well, then why? It's just disrespectful to me. And I'm just kind of like, are we hurting for pharmacists here that we need somebody from another country to come in and be a pharmacist? I understand we've always had a doctor shortage, but it's like, I mean, what's the deal? And then a lot of these problems spring up because they're communications based problems in these jobs where people are forced to communicate with people who do not speak English or French as their first language, and it just wastes time. And time is an issue for me. Um, it's very difficult for me to time manage as is, and then it's like, oh, I have to call and listen to a message of somebody speaking in like heavily accented English and press 1 to star, press 2 to this, and dealing with automation, and now you're dealing with bots and two-factor authentication, and recently dual two-factor authentication. And I just feel like these major companies, these major organizations and corporations are bleeding us dry because they're putting low-skilled workers in low-skilled jobs and just causing constant slowdown by hiring unskilled foreign workers because workers can't complain. Like, they'll get a visa that basically says they have to stay at one job, and then they'll bust their ass, and then what happens is somebody does something illegal, they complain, it's like, okay, how about you don't have a job and go back and lose all your progress, head back to where you came from. And the problem is for a citizen like me is that you have the standard lowered for when you go into the job. Like the job that I went into, it's it's ridiculous. And I understand to a certain extent the countries of the dirty little secret of countries is that they've always been built that way. But now, you have a nomination for Nate Erskine Smith for the Liberal Party nomination, and he loses to a Domino's pizza shop franchise owner who got a bunch of Indians and temporary foreign workers to give Amazon addresses in order to count as voting, and they were rushed through. And now this is a nomination process. I do not believe it was overseen by Elections Canada, because I think it would have been, Elections Canada people are well paid and organized. So this was the Liberal Party's doing, ignoring their own rules. But they basically allowed their party to be hijacked by like business owners, and it is so against the party. It's kind of disgusting that like it's even related to the party before. And it's like, yeah, it's getting ugly out there. But again, this is a film video game podcast. Let's finish off the weekend, shall we? Number 4 is the Sheep Detectives. This is a follow-up from Amazon for Project Hail Mary. It comes out, does 4,300 per theater, 15 million. Pretty good. Reviews are pretty good. Then you have Paramount Pictures, Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft, directed by Billie Eilish and James Cameron, does 7 million. Not really a good average there, especially for James Cameron. It didn't look super interesting to me. Billie Eilish is not a performer. She is the person who I think mostly is like she's the youngest person to have 2 Oscars, and I believe even still the youngest person to have an Oscar. And she's, to me, a person who lets the art speak for herself. I find her expressions like she's not she's not a performer like Sabrina Carpenter, razzle dazzle type person. The art installation stuff of what James Cameron wants to see, that's cool. And the reviews for it are good as a concert film, but 94% kinetic flair. James Cameron, it doesn't delve deep into the artist, but it has some cool stuff in it. So I mean, that's cool, but yeah, nothing major there. Watch it if you want. It'll be on Paramount Plus. And then you have the Super Mario Galaxy movie, number 6, sinking like a rock because the reviews for it were terrible. It has made about 942 million. Doing well. Project Hail Mary also doing well. 657 million. It could probably domestically, in terms of making more, it could probably end up around 350 million. And then you have Hokum by Neon doing well for a low-priced movie there. Of course, Box Office Mojo used to have their budgets listed here. No longer. Man, I need to be more slack-jawed. Then you have Deep Water. That reminds me when I'm not sitting correctly. That is just a Rennie Harlan shark thriller. 3.7 million, that's good for something like that. And then you have Animal Farm at number 10. Andy Serkis's Animal Farm. Apparently it got, co-opted in some way, and it was bought by Angel Studios, and 5 million, not a whole lot, but hey, at least it gets seen, although people say it's straight up terrible and misses the message, but oh well. Anything major in terms of milestones? Not really. The drama, 120 million at this point. Last movie I saw in theaters. The next movie I see in theaters, I'm trying to think, will it be Disclosure Day? Oh no, I'm going to see The Backrooms, which is, you're hearing it first, a movie that trackers and stuff I think are undercounting a bit, although it is being distributed by A24, who again constantly kind of whiffs on major movies. Like I believe the drama, which opened to like 15 million, was in their top 10. So yeah, that's it for the box office there. In terms of Letterboxd, I only have 4 movies that I've seen since Apex, and that's Breaking Away, which was the #1 film that Tom Hanks counts down in a clip from the movie Freaky Tales, which I talked about extensively last season. Disappointing, given its reputation. It won Best Original Screenplay, but a great example of the power of filmmaking on a local scale. It was filmed 100% in Bloomington, Indiana, and in that way it's inspiring. It is about a kid who wants to be a biker and a competitive bicycler. And the Italians come to town with their bicycling team and stuff like that. And he acts Italian and wants to be Italian. And he has a group of 4 friends, and it's just about friends who, the year after high school, are like, have we peaked? What am I going to do? There's one group who wants to keep the kids together, one who doesn't. And you have the lead actor is Dennis Christopher, who wasn't in much. You have Dennis Quaid, who obviously came on to have a big career. You have Daniel Stern, who's Marvin in Home Alone. You have Jackie Earle Haley, who later got an Oscar nomination. And those are the 4 friends. And it's from 1979, and it won Best Original Screenplay. The final shot of the loop around the track, I don't, it would have been hard to shoot because it's like really impressive. It's one of those shots where you're like, are they going to cut away? And they don't. But yeah, I gave it 2.5 stars. Somebody on my friends group, Patrick Holmes, said, a movie is so good it almost convinced me to get really into cycling. Almost. Another person said it's basically Chariots of Fire, but with slightly worse music and way better everything else. And somebody else put it's one of their top 10 favorites of all time. Any other? Oh yeah, Never Meet Your Heroes, Italians. Yeah, so decent movie, worth a watch if you see it, but it's hard to find. I had to rent that one from the library. Then on Hoopla, there's Play Dead. This is like a very minor film about directed by a horror director, Patrick Lessier, who I remember he did My Bloody Valentine 3D and a bunch of horror movies. It's basically about a criminology student who fakes her own death to break into a morgue to retrieve a piece of evidence that ties her younger brother to a crime. And once inside, she discovers the coroner, played by Jerry O'Connell, who's like a comedic actor. He's using the corpses for basically an organ harvesting business. And it's, very, very minor in terms of like horror, low budget and stuff, but it's, good direction, carries it as well as it can. And top comments, Jerry O'Connell get a better agent challenge. Around this time, Jerry O'Connell decided to take a slot on the show The Talk, and it was like well received and stuff, and it was kind of him saying that he's a bit of a failed actor, and but I like it. Yeah. Play Dead was a crazy film, over the top, well written, and directed Bailey Madison and Jerry O'Connell. Performances are good. Somebody said fine cat and mouse thriller set in morgue, limited by Jerry O'Connell being creepy but not very menacing as the bad guy. True. And overstuffed script. I actually didn't find it had a whole lot going on, but when you use animals, because there's a dog in it, great use of it. Patrick Lessier, exactly the kind of guy, if you can get him, hire him to elevate your horror. I love it when, a really experienced person in filmmaking does something that is sort of beneath them, but you can tell it's like, okay, we're going to bet on this script. Let's get a really good guy to direct the hell out of it. It's good. I mean, it's not amazing. It's horror, but in low budget horror at that. But yeah, somebody said they really expected to hate it, so they really turned it on for background noise, but actually kind of had a good time. And yeah, has a cool death scene where somebody's face splits into a million pieces. Somebody said it's a to-be original. It is not. I just said good direction, elevating a low-budget film, well cast and well written enough to be worth an hour and a half to kill time for a horror hound. True. And then the other two movies. I saw Remarkably Bright Creatures, which Joe from TikTok recommended or said that he saw and didn't like, and I saw it was based on a book, and I saw that it was from the director of Where the Crawdads Sing, a movie that I don't think is especially well directed, but was only Olivia Newman's first film. And so on movies like this, you find out, okay, what on the second movie, what do they usually get right? What are their instincts, really? This movie, directed by Olivia Newman, is about unlikely bonds formed during night shifts at a local aquarium. It takes place at night. I had no idea that was when their shift was going. But anyway, Tova, an elderly widow played by two-time Academy Award winner Sally Field, learns of a life-changing discovery that may bring her joy and wonder again. She looks after the local octopus, and Lewis Pullman is the one who comes into town and is expected to take over for him. And he's kind of like a near-do-weller rock band kind of guy. And then you have Colm Meaney, who's looked 50 for like 50 years, and now he's like 72. And you're like, oh, he's that old, eh? Like, he gained weight. He's just like an Irish guy, and he's just always played a curmudgeon. And then you also have, I feel like there's a fourth major actor in here, but not really. But it's a fascinating movie. You can tell why it made such a good novel, because it has like a plot about, them looking after an octopus who's animated quite well. Those AI videos of like giant octopuses crawling over cars and stuff like that are the kind of thing that AI has, I guess, helped, figure out. So the CGI in this movie on the octopus is pretty good. So, there's been development on that in recent years. So it elevates it a bit more above TV movie. And then you also have Sally Field, who, again, isn't above TV movie status, but the story just pulls it together really well, because you have the octopus subplot, you have something going on with Lewis Pullman trying to find his dad, you have Sally Field, who's not sure if he wants to move into a retirement home or not, and it's kind of sad because you've really grown up with these actors. Like Sally Field, you saw in Amazing Spider-Man 2 when she was a younger Aunt May, and you saw her, in Mrs. Doubtfire. I was a really young kid when that came in. I was like 3, so, and she's always looked to me older or middle-aged. Like, I recently saw Smokey and the Bandit, and she does look young there, but nonetheless, it's weird to see actors that you've known to be middle-aged suddenly get old. And the movie is about growing up, and I just thought the final twist that pulls everything together made it worth watching. And it's kind of like a chick flick. I think women would like it. But yeah, I wrote, is there any clever one-liners? I've now consecutively cried over a rock alien, Project Hail Mary, an octopus, Remarkably Bright Creatures, this movie, and most likely Sheep Next, The Sheep Detectives, which, by the way, I mentioned, MGN film. It's about a bunch of sheep who try to find out who murdered their owner, I think, and the reviews are good. It's from the writer of Chernobyl. I'll watch it when it pops up on Amazon or something. Yeah, what else do we have? I'm not going to say anything that has the spoilers. I just wrote, so this is what happened to Doc Ock. Satisfying storytelling that pulls everything together. Field acts her heart out to a CGI octopus. Meaney is a big softie. Colm Meaney, that's the Irish actor I spoke about being an old curmudgeon for 50 years. And I wrote that the only thing that holds it back is the direction, which, although cast well and has good production design and CGI, does not have strong connective tissue between scenes, and Pullman acts like all his lines were changed at the last minute. Hopefully he becomes like a better director or actor, sorry. Finally, we have Domestic to Servants, and it reminded me how, I forgot how good of a creep Vince Vaughn is. John Travolta, keeps his Michael wig, where he played like an angel like a few years earlier, but has gained like 35 pounds. I love how the kid straight up lies to his dad, but the dad is like, F it, I hate this guy, I'm in. It is about Frank Morrison, a divorced father, played by John Travolta, who has a 12-year-old son, Danny, who gets in trouble with the law. And he's just causing trouble to get his mom and dad back together, Susan. And Susan now lives with Rick Barnes, Susan's new husband. Rick is played by Vince Vaughn. Danny, the kid, has a reputation for telling lies. He accuses his stepfather, Vince Vaughn's character, of committing a murder, which we see, so we know that he murders a guy. Initially, no one believes his accusations, but then Frank, the dad, John Travolta, becomes convinced and is the only one who believes him. And now the father, Danny Truss, must protect him from the stepfather he fears. So this is a movie that came out. It cost like $75 million in 2001 money, and which is weird because it looks like a $25 million movie. Anyway, it came out, it bombed, got like middling reviews and stuff like that. But it was paced well, had professionalism to it. It was what I would call a blockbuster movie because I saw it listed in the magazine as a kid. And yeah, 2.5 stars, but like watchable 2.5 stars. Moving on. That is the Letterboxd group. Now, I want to get to something here just briefly for the video game section. I have reset up my, all my consoles here, so I'm all set to do more game stuff for you this summer. But I wanted to bring up a game which people are talking about, Mixtape, and this is sort of like a point-and-click adventure from Annapurna. Now, Annapurna is headed by Megan Ellison, who I talked about her brother, David Ellison, in the earlier segment, and their father is Larry Ellison. Now, here's the thing. David Ellison makes predominantly bad movies, and Megan Ellison makes good movies predominantly, which I think is worth noting. Now, Annapurna Pictures, just so you know, I'm gonna list the movies that Annapurna Pictures made because they started in movies first. They made Wallace, the Tom Hardy, Shia LaBeouf, Jessica Chastain movie about Prohibition. They made The Master. And these are movies that they made. They weren't just distributing them like A24. From the beginning, they were making these movies. Killing Them Softly, a movie I don't like, but Brad Pitt made them, has a great cast. Zero Dark 30, they made this movie. Good movie. Spring Breakers, the first A24 movie. Good movie. Grandmaster. Good movie. Her. I don't like it as much as everyone else. I reviewed it for the Fulcrum, but good movie. American Hustle. Not a good movie, but a lot of interesting performances. Foxcatcher, good movie. For some reason, they made Terminator Genesis not a good movie, and Joy, not a good movie. Everybody Wants Some, good movie. Sausage Party, good movie. 20th Century Women, I'll never watch it. Boring movie, probably, because that director, Mike Mills, is boring. But Bad Batch, interesting movie, maybe. I tried watching it, I'm like, not for me. Detroit, boring movie, interesting misfire. A movie about the creator of Wonder Woman. Some people thought it was interesting. Phantom Thread, nominated for Best Picture, decent movie. The Sisters Brothers, kind of a near miss. I didn't like that movie a lot. Adaptation of a great novel. You had Jay Gyllenhaal, you had Joaquin Phoenix, you had Jacques Audiard, who's like a decent. It just, to me, it didn't come together. But yeah, if Beale Street Could Talk, interesting movie. Great score, which people rip off all the time. Bout of Buster Scruggs, decent movie. The last movie Coen Brothers made together. Destroyer with Nicole Kidman, I love that movie. Okay? Vice, not a good movie, but like a successful one anyways. Nominated for Best Picture, ridiculously. It's just like a bad movie. But like whatever. Booksmart, good movie. Hustlers, I didn't like the movie, but it was like a hit. Then, it starts coming apart because of, the pandemic and stuff, and they scale down a bit. They made She Said, which I did like, was a good telling of like the Me Too story and stuff like that. Um, and then, they did Night Bitch, that was a flop. Testament of Annalie, interesting. I'll say they're in I Love Boosters and stuff. And then they have The Invite coming out, which some people say is good. Um, yeah. They're making a movie based on the video game Stray. They made uh, previous film. Is Nimona real? That's not based on the video game. That's a TV show, right? Yeah, no, it was a book. It's a graphic novel. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, yeah. And so Annapurna, run by Megan Ellison, is also made video games in addition to producing movies. Um, Annapurna Interactive. I'm gonna list off some of the games they've, as a development and film studio. Uh, they because they struggled with financial issues. She stepped back. Her father, Larry Ellison, helped stabilize the company, um, and yeah, they eventually like reappeared and uh, hired some qualified people and stuff like that. But like, okay, are they gonna mention this here? No. Okay, so here's I'll just go down of games that they have published. What Remains of Edith Finch, 2017, a very good game. Um, they um, ported Flower to the PC, very good game. Gone Home is like a walking simulator. I've talked about it. Everybody's talked about it. It's a very good game. Um, uh, they made that, right? Yeah. But Fulbright published it themselves. Whatever. Outer Wilds, a game I talked about it extensively. I put like 96 hours into it. It's insane. But like again, they published it. Good stuff. Journey. I mean, again, another movie similar, another game similar to Flower that they took from someone else and just reported it. But again, to PC, more people can play this great game. I recommend it. I played it on PlayStation 3. Sayonara Wild Hearts, the only game that I've bothered to play on an iPad. It's just kind of weird, but it's interesting. Kentucky Route Zero, people like, but yeah. And then, more ports, Unfinished Swan, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to think, but like Stray was a game that they had uh, like published as well, and that is my favorite game that I've played. You know, in the last few years, you just play as a cat who falls down, tumbles down, and it's just about a cat getting back home, climbing up through this city and stuff like that. And you just play as a cat. It's fun. And you run away from enemies and you try and solve puzzles and stuff like that. These are these kind of like walking simulators and stuff that they do. But yeah, these games, primarily, What Remains of Edith Finch being their main one, I they're they're good. What Remains of Edith Finch and Outer Wilds alone are very good games. And yeah, what bothers me is that they came out with a game that is basically a 3 hour interactive click adventure that has no fail state, which is basically like it's a game that plays itself. It's a 3 hour game that is like super easy to review, and it costs $20, and it's inspired tonally and visually by 80s coming of age films. And similar to the work of, John Hughes and that kind of thing, because there's a scene in it that basically mimics Ferris Bueller. The thing is, like, somebody showed on TikTok or social media, look, here's the scene playing out as a game. I'm not pressing any buttons, and, like, nothing's changing. So it's just kind of like you can pretty much let the game play itself. And so, in terms of gameplay, there kind of is none. It's just window dressing. And people are taking that and doing the detective work of seeing who the publisher is, and you click on it on its Wikipedia page, and it's like, Annapurna Interactive. Huh. Who's the founder of that? Megan Ellison. Oh. Who's her dad? Larry Ellison. Oh, the guy who's backstopping, the Warner Brothers Paramount deal, which of course I'm against. And they're just kind of like, oh, therefore, this game is shit and the people who published it are evil. I don't go that far. If you're a billionaire, or your father is a billionaire, like as Ben Affleck's son says, we're rich, and Ben Affleck is like, no, we're not rich. I'm rich. You're broke. If you are a wealthy person and you put your money towards publishing games and stuff that is good, and you do a good job at that, I think that's worth it. If you're like David Ellison, and you're producing movies, and, if I read to you, I talked to you about Megan Ellison's work at Annapurna. Her run of movies was quite exquisite. David Ellison doing the same thing. This is the guy that bought Warner Brothers. Now, I'll just go through it here. Flyboys, terribly reviewed. True Grit, I'll give you that one. But the Coen brothers were on that one. Anybody can do a good Coen brothers film if the Coen brothers are doing it. Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise film. They have the franchise rights on Mission Impossible. They usually buy in with that. Guilt Trip, not a great movie. Jack Reacher, okay movie. G.I. Joe Retaliation, I like it. It's not great. Star Trek 2, not great movie. It has some cool stuff in it, not great. World War Z, it's okay. I rewatched it. It's, I like the set pieces in it. Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit, okay. Star Trek Beyond, the weakest in terms of direction of the trilogy. It's fine. Jack Reacher 2, not great. Not great. It's so terrible. It killed the franchise. Baywatch killed the franchise. They're redoing it as a TV series. Annihilation, he fought with the director who he didn't know he was getting into bed with, I guess. Publicly tried to sell off the rights because he wanted it away from so bad. Now it's like well regarded, but it flopped. They ended up selling half the rights. He got in a big fight with Paramount. They sold the rights to Netflix. It was publicly and embarrassing. You had Mission Impossible, another Tom Cruise film. Without Remorse, probably one of the lesser, worst scripts Taylor Sheridan has written. It was just kind of like a nothing streaming movie. Snake Eyes, not great. Transformers, one that Michael Bay didn't do, Rise of Beasts, not a great movie. Dead Reckoning Part 1, okay, but it starred Tom Cruise. Final Reckoning, a movie that's like a mess, has one cool scene in it, but like, let me go through a bit more, and I'll skip over the Tom Cruise movies. Life, okay. Geostorm, terrible. Gemini Man, terrible. Terminator Dark Fate, terrible. Six Underground has some cool stuff, terrible. The Old Guard, terrible. Tomorrow War, terrible. Adam Project, watchable. Greatest Beer Never, pretty disappointing. Air, it's about a friggin' shoe. I don't like that movie at all. Some people like it, I'll give it to them. Although, like, that movie cost like $90 million, and it took, and granted, artist equity. Everybody made it, got paid well on that movie, good for them. But, like, that movie cost $90 million, and it takes place in a fluorescent tube of a building. It's ridiculous it costs that much money. And it didn't even make that much money back in the thing, and people are like, oh, it's a hit, it's going for Best Picture. It's about a friggin' shoe deal. It's not about the guy who started Nike, although he's in it. It's not about Michael Jordan. It's about the guy who started the shoe company negotiating an endorsement deal for Michael Jordan. And it's just like a nothing story, in my opinion. Didn't deserve to be made at all. Nothing interesting about it. Ghosted has some laughs, and in no way is a good movie. Heart of Stone, I listed this as the worst movie of 2023. Spy Kids Armageddon, because if you sit through it, you'll feel like it's close to Armageddon. The Gorge, disappointing. Old Guard 2, reviews were so bad I couldn't even watch it. Fountain of Youth, this movie cost, you will not believe, an eye-watering $180 million. Doesn't really look it. Is not that good. The Family Plan 2, still, I'll be honest, I still haven't watched it. I thought the first one was okay. Didn't really need to be done. Like these are the movies that this guy is doing, and yeah, I mean, with hope, the Brad Bird movie Raygun, that's like an animated noirish movie with Tom Rockwell, Scarlett Johansson, Tom Waits. I mean, hopefully it's good. It's supposed to be salvaged, but like, you want to compare the movies that they did. He just has bad taste. David Ellison has horrible taste, and he was allowed to buy Paramount because the other option were not great. It was either going to be half absorbed by Sony, or it was going to be Netflix before they even tried to commit to theatrical, I think. And so that, having somebody who wasn't in this film business was going to be fine. It was fine that he bought Paramount 1 year ago. And now he's already like, I bought one of the 6 biggest movie studios, but that's not good enough, Dad. Let me get another movie studio. And it's like, don't be greedy. You greedy effing be-tard. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that. So don't take it out on Megan Ellison specifically, because I've seen the mob go after, I remember when Joe Rogan said he wasn't going to vote for Joe Biden, or wasn't sure if he was going to vote for him. And then CNN just like relentlessly attacked Joe Rogan. And it like polarized Joe Rogan to the point where he's like, fine, F you. This isn't worth it. I'm going to go right. I'm going to swing right in my politics and stuff. And so, you push people to the fringes when you attack them. And I'm not saying get away from, I'm not defending billionaires or stuff. I'm just saying to the TikTok influence idiots who decided to cover games yesterday because it's trendy and can click on a Wikipedia link, maybe you shouldn't like immediately trash the publisher of a game that you managed to play and interest everybody. Now, granted, when you see that they could afford to send out, it's an independently published game, and they sent out to these other influencers, a bunch of like fancy kits and mixtapes and stuff like that. And the thing about this game too is that it is like period sloppy. It's like nostalgia slop. It's weirdly should be taking place in 1999, but it takes place in the early 90s, like 93, and has people obsessed with the 80s, which, you know, I'm somewhat nostalgic for 2019, but like, am I gonna wear it day to day? No. And it's just like a heavily licensed soundtrack and stuff like that. So it really is muscling in, that part of the the game that's like expensive that indie developers would not be able to do. But I'm gonna say, give her this one. You know, I don't like the game. We don't have to keep playing it. You know, we can let it go. But yeah, if you were to ask me, I would say those influence idiots are, wanting to, talk about it because they're mad that they themselves did not get the fancy, swag that Annapurna was sending it out. By the way, personally, I'd love to get that. I'd love to be of that influence. I did write a few more reviews. I did my top 5 list for The Pit, which is available on Flickering Myth, and I am working on, another article for them, which I hope to publish in the next day or so. But yeah. Um, Moving on. One thing I wanted to clean up, by the way, about the Odyssey was, yeah, Christopher Nolan is great at interactive marketing. He did a bit of Fortnite stuff, and now for the Odyssey on Discord, there's like a challenge. And it actually got me more interested in the movie, my uncle sent me a video from Instagram about some guy who used an AI generated video of Elliot Page, and I know I mentioned this partly already in Lupita Nyong'o, but I didn't finish the thought, saying that, this woke nonsense of, Lupita Nyong'o being black and being Helen of Troy, and Elliot Page, you know, playing Achilles. I do not think that's going to be the case, and I'm guessing based on the trailer that Elliot is playing somebody from the underworld who might be Epinor or somebody like that who's like a fallen soldier of Odysseus. So I'm saying I don't trust a guy on social media who isn't doesn't have the subject of what they're talking about in their bio. It's a very good thing to go by. Like, I'm Film Gamer. If you hear me talking about politics, unless you're a regular listener, take it with a grain of salt. Although I might mention politics in my bio, I haven't read it recently. And I do have a political website actually that I never use. And it's legitimately an interest of mine and I do follow it. However, if I started talking about sports and stuff, I'm not an authority on sports. If I talk about clothing or food, style, pickup artistry, that kind of thing, those are things you cannot and should not take me seriously on. But if I talk about movies or games, which I have described in my bio, yes, I am an authority on that. I am an authority on the box office. I am an authority on reviewing something. But if you're browsing and I'm talking about something and you go and you look at my profile and it's like, you see these business executives talk about culture in, very broad terms. That's their specialty. They're not. I know people don't think that hard about what they consume and it just comes across their feed and, when it does, it can be very convincing. But yeah, I just want to dispel one thing about that, which is that guy was using AI images. If you come across images and portray, you know, the Odyssey as some kind of right wing woke nonsense, it's just nonsense itself. The other thing I wondered about was it also partly sort of a low key whisper campaign to get people to talk about the movie? Because it was actually enough to get me to rent the graphic novel version of the Odyssey from the library. I did have a copy of the book, but short attention spans and all. I did get medication today, breakthrough, for my ADHD. So we'll see if my writing and stuff improves in the meantime. So that's something to look forward to. And I'm also getting more physiotherapy for my injury and trying to correct my back and those sort of issues. So, that's just some quick background stuff to end the video. So yeah, I want to thank you for listening to episode 6-7, and I'll see you for episode 5. I don't know exactly when I'll be posting these, but I wanted to post them as soon as possible when I did. I'd been meaning to do this for a while, and I'll just make a minute of this because it's so insignificant. But I am a box office expert, and no one else is going to do this. So, Melissa Barrera recently spoke last week. She was the star of Scream 5 and 6, and she's not a very good actress, but she was fired for taking a stand on social media against, Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu's regime for, bombing children and basically being a terrorist, but a duly elected Democratic one, although they haven't had an election in a while because they're in the middle of war. The company that Barrera worked for at the time was Spyglass Media, who produces the Scream films and are run by two Jewish guys who are I don't know how else to pronounce this, but Zionists, um, and the state of Israel is important to them, as is the case with David Ellison as well. And maybe because of that, weirdly, Trump has been on his side, or he's been on Trump's side, trying to sway them, and maybe there's some bigger conspiracy for that you can take to another talk show. Nonetheless, um, my policy being that whatever somebody says on social media shouldn't count, because again, it's not currently under the law free speech, although we could always take on more responsibility if that was the case, and that might be nice or whatever have you. She said stuff that was against the regime of Netanyahu, and the owners of Spyglass Media, the Scream franchise, didn't like that. They fired her. When they fired her, it caused a big uproar. And then Jenna Ortega, who had the show Wednesday going on, left due to scheduling issues after this Barrera girl was fired because she was told, apologize. She's like, I refuse to apologize, stand by my values, sort of thing. And they said, bye bye. And two of the supporting actors are just kind of like Mason Gooding, Nepo Baby, and Jasmine Savoy Brown are kind of like, okay, well, we can't really, you know, we know our limits. We're not gonna join in this boycott. We're not as big as Jenna Ortega, and we're not the lead actor in a film, and we also don't have, Abigail booked, which she did at the time. So, uh, Scream 6 comes out and is a hit, and then Abigail, the director's follow-ups, comes out, is not a hit. It's well reviewed, but it's not a hit. And then the work dries up for her, and she ends up getting a job from Boots Riley, who's like a writer. He's out with a movie, I Love Boosters, and then she gets more steady work that she has to take because she needs like the most steady work possible. And now she's on Broadway for Titanic, and she was recently interviewed about it, and her words that she said and how she felt about being fired from Scream, which recently came out with Scream 7, which did not have her or Jenna Ortega in it, but was the highest grossing film of the Scream franchise by far. Again, an example of sort of a movie bubbling under and growing in popularity, being a breakout sequel during COVID, because the fifth one, which was a reboot of the franchise, came out during COVID. The sixth one was quite a bit bigger, and then this one came out, and it felt like sort of a return to form, because these famously, they're known for being cheap. Spyglass owners did not pay Neve Campbell, the previous lead of the series, a whole lot of money. So she's like, this isn't my worth, I'm out. And so because they had not paid her enough before, they brought her back for this one, and they had that out. And then their other thing was, because the director they had originally hired walked away because of the uproar behind the whole firing of Barrera, um, they decided, oh, we'll go back to the original co-writer of the original Scream and bring him in as a director, and he made by far the worst film in the franchise. So Burr was asked about this, and she said, I think that they lied about how successful the most recent Scream was. And people took that to mean that she was just bitter. And she absolutely is, and I would be too. And she probably overestimated her worth, for sure, because, again, she seems very nice, but she's not the best actress. I do not think her acting is very good at all, but it's probably well suited to Broadway and a comedy like that. Maybe she should do more comedies in the future. But could she be right? And could they? People tend to dismiss this out of hand, but people also tend to not analyze the box office like I do. And I just want to let you know that there is a history of the box office numbers being manipulated. There was a movie that came out in the 90s called Maverick with Mel Gibson and Jodie Foster. It was based on a TV series. And it went away out of theaters for a while. And then when it came back to theaters, the company had to list it as being grossed over $100 million. And people were just kind of like, huh, that's odd, you know. didn't report it, still had quite a bit money to make to cross that threshold, and then it gets reported as crossing that threshold. I believe it's still holding the record for slowest movie to cross $100 million. And some people doubt that that was actually the case. Now, a couple more recent examples of people manipulating the numbers on a small level, because people care more about the box office now. But in 2006, the Omen remake was rushed to get to theaters for 6606, and on opening day, the box office for the Omen remake ended in $666. And somebody was asked, oh, why is that the case? And this is, 20 years ago. It was the Tuesday record at the time. But people were like, huh, because it made 16 million total. But opening day, again, at the time, the Tuesday record, it made $12,633,666. And it was just people having fun with the numbers. Not a big deal. Another time, in more recent memory, Gran Turismo, based on true story, came out. And this is another, casual manipulation. This is in 2023. And what happened was the movie was supposed to come out, 2 weeks earlier. Because it released on August 25th. It was supposed to come out on August 11th. And it didn't want to run into the Oppenheimer thing, and the buzz tracking was low. So what it decided to do was they punted it for 2 weeks, and then what they did was they held sneak previews. And what they did was, for the Friday number, they threw in about 4 million worth of those sneak previews that were unreported, and wrap those up in the Friday numbers. So it made 8 million on Friday instead of 4 million. And they did that so that the movie would be number one at the box office, because otherwise Barbie would have been number one at the box office. People actually forget that Barbie made more than Oppenheimer, but it doesn't matter a whole lot. But Warner Brothers got mad because they had the number one and number two movies of Barbie and Blue Beetle, and they were like, oh, Sony rigged it because they cheated the numbers and stuff like that. And the general sentiment was, yeah, so does everybody. So again, another instance of market manipulation. And now, would Paramount lie about about the amount of money it made? Yes and no. There's a thing known as Hollywood accounting, where a movie like Yesterday comes out and opens, and that movie was, like, by all means a successful hit. Deadline even reported it as one of the most profitable blockbusters. It's a movie that only cost $26 million, made opened to like 17 million, made domestically, near 3 times that, 73 million, worldwide 150 million. So it made 1, 2, 3, 4, like 6 times its budget, not including marketing. They never do. And then when it came down to paying fees and stuff like that, I forget who they were with, because it's a Universal Picture working title, which is their British arm, partially Universal and whatnot. They had to argue to someone that it didn't make any money. And in Britain, you have to be very strident in reporting. After a number of years, it comes out what a movie cost. For example, because Star Wars The Force Awakens came out, the budget for that movie was revealed, and it wouldn't have had to be otherwise, but because of like British laws, it was revealed the budget of the movie was over $500 million. Why the F is the Wikipedia page not coming up? There it is. It's just hidden under garbage. And before taxes, it cost $638 million. After taxes, $535 million. it is the most expensive film ever made. And they tried to kind of hide that for a while. But yeah, it had to be released. In America, they do not have those same transparency laws. So there is nothing really stopping these companies from saying a movie did or did not make money. They're always telling certain people it made no money, so they have to avoid giving, you know, residuals. And so it could be that beforehand they lied to Barrera about the amount of residuals that they made. And so when this doesn't line up, they're saying, oh, it's because it actually made no money, or she's being fed bad information. For Paramount to lie on this level would be huge. So I'm doubtful that that is the case. It's more likely that she's bitter. But I just wanted to make it clear that there is a history of other companies, Universal, Sony, all of them, 20th century, being manipulative about their numbers. Warner Brothers as well, who I believe produced Maverick. It's bothering me, but I'm pretty sure because it's like a Warner Brothers film, and Mel Gibson was with Warner Brothers, and it was Warner Brothers who distributed it. Yeah. Yeah, Scream 7 made 121 million domestic, 207 million worldwide. That was a bit more than Scream 6, which made, I think, 110 or 105. 108. Yeah. And it opened huge. It opened to like 63 million. So it was like by far the biggest. So, they took in 100 of that, so it like more than doubled its budget in profit. And yeah, they just didn't want to do that. But the thing is, another thing that they're not regarding is that there was a whole lot of noise online about this movie. And as we've seen, going back to Snakes on a Plane, because I'm that old, there's a history of internet hype not matching real life hype. And this was the case where people were like, oh, boycott this, boycott that, boycott Scream 7, solidarity, blah, blah, blah. And it just didn't come through because regular audiences do not care. And this was that case of social media, online internet discourse is so distorted and so focused. We are in our bubbles that something that might seem very important to you and very important to the people around you and the people that you're interacting with might have very considerably little bearing on real life. So keep that in mind when you're encountering your next TikTok rant.